So we're seeing the pictures of Marine One as it flies that very short distance from Wimfield House, which is in Regent's Park, not far from where we are at Buckingham Palace, just on the edge of Green Park. And there we go, I can see the helicopter just flying over the top now of Buckingham Palace, and we'll watch as, accompanied by the second helicopter that Daniela was mentioning, and you can see a third, and then I think there may be a fourth coming in, but the helicopters coming in, Marine One just circling round, overflying London as the President and the First Lady prepare to come and greet the Queen and Charles and Camilla. And you can just see the close-up pictures there on the screen of the helicopter, but I can tell you it is close now to Buckingham Palace. It's actually just flown over Buckingham Palace and is just doing a little circuit around as comes into land. And there is quite a crowd here. There is Marine One. And we'll be able to
just say what we've just seen is some of the decoy aircraft. As you see with any president coming in anywhere, that there will be some aircraft that go ahead for security issues and fly off before we see the actual aircraft landing in the gardens of Buckingham Palace.
Looks like it's flying in close to that tree. Daniela, are they used to helicopters landing? Is there a helipad in the grounds of Buckingham Palace?
They are used to helicopters in Buckingham Palace Gardens. The Queen herself would often travel by helicopter and land there, so it should be familiar territory for anyone landing a helicopter in the gardens there. These gardens, of course, over recent weeks have seen many a Queen's Garden Party in there with thousands and thousands of people going through. Today, welcoming an American president.
And this is a rare honour for an American president. Only the third American president to have a state visit.
That's right, George Bush Jr. the first, then Barack Obama, and now Donald Trump. So only the third state visit, but the Queen during her reign has met every American president bar Lyndon Johnson. So although they may not have been given the full works of a state visit, she has met, in terms of working visits or her own visits to America, every American president since 1952.
So they met last year, and here we go, there's another helicopter coming in. Daniela, you mentioned the entourage.
Yeah, so what we are seeing here overhead at Buckingham Palace should be two helicopters landing in the garden. One Nighthawk 2, which will have members of staff and of the Trump entourage on board, and then Marine One itself then landing in the garden, which will have the President and the First Lady on board.
So that
should be the one landing now. It was due to land at 12:10 according to the schedule, so you would think that this is the aircraft that has the President and First Lady on board. So two aircraft landed. The first one called Nighthawk 2 with other staff on board, then Marine One landing in the gardens of Buckingham Palace that will have the President and the First Lady Melania Trump on board.
And they did meet last year. As much been said about what the conversations were, what happened with those?
It was described as a short working visit. The Trumps went to meet the Queen at Windsor Castle then, so it lacked the formality of today. It was something very different to what we are going to see over the course of the next few hours. It was much more informal. It was afternoon tea for around 45 minutes at Windsor, where the Queen met the President and, you know, they had a private chat. So there wasn't as much ceremony and pomp as we are going to see today. A little bit for a working visit, but nothing like a state visit. They are completely different events.
There's a lot of squeamishness from some around this visit. Labour politicians,
Yeah.
Jeremy Corbyn is not going to be going to that banquet tonight. The leader of the Lib Dems, Vince Cable, also.
Yeah, that's right. Many leading politicians who you would expect to attend a state banquet, because the state banquet would normally see political leaders, leaders of the opposition, the Mayor of London. They would normally attend one of the state banquets. Many of those people will not be there. They have chosen not to attend, refuse their invitation. So, you know, that is different. It's playing a little bit differently because of that particular issue and because of how people feel about the President and what he has said since he became President of the United States. But saying that, it is the Queen who is leading this part of the state visit today. She is an expert at diplomacy. She is an expert at this kind of event, and I think a lot of the drama and chat around it won't bother her.
Daniela, thank you. We are continuing coverage of the presidential visit on the BBC News channel. For now, we say goodbye to viewers on BBC Two. Bye-bye. And there we can see Marine One just landed in the grounds of Buckingham Palace, and we expect any moment to see the President and the First Lady step off to be greeted by the Queen and Charles and Camilla, who are there for the official welcome. And the Prince of Wales will join the President to inspect a guard of honour. Daniela, talk us through what is going to be unfolding prior to lunch, because they'll be sitting down for lunch at 1 o'clock.
Yes, so we will see very shortly the President and the First Lady Melania emerge from Marine One onto that immaculate lawn there of Buckingham Palace Garden. The moment the President steps out, we should at the same time also hear a royal salute fired from Green Park, an 82-gun salute. So 41 fired to welcome the President here to the UK, another 41 to mark the anniversary of the Queen's coronation, which was yesterday. So it could get a little noisy behind us as the President steps out of the aircraft. He will be met by a Marine One Guard of Honour. We will see shortly taking up position. And the President will initially be met by the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall. So not the Queen initially. Okay. He will then be walked across the lawn of Buckingham Palace Gardens here, where he will meet the Queen on the West Terrace, which is a little bit out of our picture at the moment. He will meet the Queen. There will be some welcomes done at that point. Here we see the Prince of Wales coming out into the gardens of Buckingham Palace there, ready to meet the President with his wife, the Duchess of Cornwall. They will go out towards the aircraft to welcome President Trump and the First Lady on the very first official part of their visit to the UK. And once they have greeted the President, as I said, they will take him back across the lawn to meet the Queen.
And the tone of the last US presidential state visit, the Obamas, was very friendly, wasn't it?
It was very friendly. There was an obvious warmth between the Queen and the Obamas. I think, you know, anybody could see that, and we know that subsequently the Obamas came back with their children for a private visit to Buckingham Palace to show their daughters around Buckingham Palace. So clearly there was a sort of connection and a warmth in terms of that particular visit. It's very hard to know how things will pan out. Here we see the President and the First Lady. And you can probably pick up the gun salute as well from Green Park just behind us. The President there meeting the Prince of Wales. A very warm handshake, the First Lady, the Duchess of Cornwall. And we have said before, but this is a really important moment for Donald Trump in terms of how it plays back home and what it means to him personally. There is a real sort of status that comes with getting a state visit and meeting the Queen and having these pictures with the future King here played out back at home. It will really matter to him, and it will be very important to him personally as well as politically.
And you mentioned there, Daniela, that gun salute, 82.
Yeah, from here, 82, 41 to welcome the President, to mark the state visit, another 41 because yesterday was the anniversary of the Queen's coronation.
Have these two men met before?
Do you know what,
Did they meet last year?
I don't know. No, they didn't last year. At Windsor, that was just the Queen. So it's hard to know whether they've had any dealings before. We know that Donald Trump has met the Duke of York a number of times before, who he'll be with later on today.
I mean, obviously we've no idea what they're talking about, but it was quite interesting talking to Jeremy Hunt, the Foreign Secretary, earlier, who had just literally 2 or 3 minutes with the President after he got off the plane, and he said at that point that the President was, oh, there's the Queen, the President was keen to tell him his views on Sadiq Khan.
Yes. Yeah, he's not somebody to hold back, is he? And he's going to make it very clear what he thinks about what's been said by the Mayor of London. And there we go, the Queen and the President, their first meeting during this state visit on the West Terrace of Buckingham Palace in the Gardens.